All right, well, welcome everyone. Really nice to see you. Bienvenue à tous et à toutes. My name is Lane Johnson. I am the City Councillor for College Ward. Thank you so much for joining us for our second annual town hall. I see a lot of familiar faces, and I see some new faces too, which is really encouraging. We have had over 130 people say they're coming in person, and we've had about 130 people say that they're showing up online. So I think that's, a 50% increase from last year. So it's really encouraging to see everyone here today. So I just want to start by acknowledging that we're gathered here on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Hello and welcome to you. So we have, as I said, guests here virtually. Guests are being encouraged online to use the question and answer function to add your questions to the queue. And today what we're going to do is, I've been asked if there's an agenda. There truly is not. The impetus for this event is that, we at the City of Ottawa often have our public engagement in sort of prescribed narrow boxes. You engage on this project or you engage in this manner. And I think that residents feel sometimes like there's pieces of what they'd like to talk about that get left out of those processes. And so when I ran for office, I said I would do an annual town hall, and it really is that. We're gonna take questions. I have a microphone. David has a microphone. David, if you want to wave here, hello. And we're gonna go into the audience. We're gonna rotate, my microphone, David's microphone, and online, and we're just gonna go around and around, and we're gonna see how many questions we can get through. And that's really all it is. And we're gonna do the best we can. I think when it comes to city staff, and just to acknowledge and welcome all of the fabulous guests we have here from various levels of seniority and various, project expertise, it's really nice to see them in person, isn't it? Look at, they all have, yes. They all live here, they've all got a nose. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. And, I think that ultimately what I'm hoping we can do is enter into this with a spirit of, good faith, believing that we are all showing up to create a better city together. And we're going to approach these questions with curiosity and with compassion for each other. So I would invite us to show up together like this. And the more we show up together like that, the more forums we get to have in this way. The more we can teach each other that it's safe to come and talk about things that are really important to us, because we can do it in a respectful way and see results. So I'm really encouraged that from last year's town hall, we've been able to address questions for the Centre Point Park aeration, for example. We've been able to modify the certificates and stickers that kids get when they do swimming lessons. We've been able to talk about Baseline and Rockway, where we're now going to see a signalized intersection. So there's really good things coming out of these sessions. So there are some ground rules for today. I'm sure I don't need to remind you, but I will let you know sort of what the expectations are. So we are going to ask that you keep your questions to like 90 seconds, and because we're going to have so many to get through. And similarly, staff, if you're able to keep your answers to something reasonable, that would be great too. We're going to ask that you are respectful to one another and to each other. Again, I think we can do this successfully together. And if we can't, then we will remove the microphone. I think that's reasonable. We don't want to create a harmful space for anybody. Similarly, we're only going to go over a particular topic one time. So if you hear your topic sort of chatted about, please be advised that that's going to be how we're going to cycle through. That's sort of like the time, and we'll move on to different kinds of questions, just because there's a whole diversity of experiences and questions that we want to get through today, and lots of different brains on this table. So other than that, yeah, I think we're going to ask also that we don't interrupt each other, that we don't have little side conversations and like boo-erns and stuff like that. Like, that doesn't make anybody feel good. We really want people to feel good about talking about their city. Come on in, Jennifer. Speaking of that, there's bylaw. Ah, the timing. Yeah, so all that to say, I really want to say I am so grateful for all of you to come. And I think we're going to show everybody how the residents of College Ward really are the best residents in the whole city with the way that we show up today. So thanks again for doing this. Big hand. So I think what we'll do to start off is we're going to just get everyone to quickly introduce themselves. And if you don't remember who they are, that's okay. You ask your question. We'll try and direct to whoever it is. And if we don't get to your question tonight, we do have magnets with our email address and so on in the back. And I've got a great team. So David was here. Who else is on my team? There's Chelsea. Chelsea's organized this whole event. Yay, Chelsea. She's wonderful. And then here's Heather. Heather is right here. Fabulous planning person. And Zoe was there. There she is in the back. Also a wonderful teammate. So we have you covered. If we don't talk to get your question today, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll get you covered. Okay. So shall we start with the best for last, the last for best?
Hi everyone, I'm Jen Thurkelson Jennifer. I am a program manager of enforcement with Bylaw and Regulatory Services.
Hi, my name is Mary Ellen Gleason. I'm the program manager for construction of the west extension of LRT.
Hi everyone, Riley Carter, traffic assessment specialist with Traffic Services.
Good evening. My name is Krista Tanaka. I'm the Associate Director of Traffic Services.
Good evening. My name is Haran Sandhanaka. I'm the Manager of Water Resources Planning and Engineering, and it's in the Asset Management Service, which I know is a lot of jargon, so you could ask questions about what that actually means if there's any questions.
Hi everyone, Peter Giles, Senior Planner in Planning Policy. That's the team that looks after secondary plans in the city.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Murphy, and I'm the Program Manager for Transportation Engineering Services.
I'm Vivi Chi, the Interim General Manager for the Planning, Development, and Building Code Services.
Hi, I'm Pat Scrimger at OC Transpo, and I'm Director of looking after service planning and budgeting and customer service and technology.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Lockhart. I'm the Deputy Chief Billing Official with Bill and Code Services.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Chenier. I'm the General Manager of Recreation, Culture, and Facilities.
That would be the Department of Fun. I'm at the Department of Non-Fun. I'm also with Bylaw and Regulatory Services. I'm Program Manager of Operational Support and Regulatory Services. And I'm going to come clean right now. I oversee dogs and parks designations. So be kind. I'm really a nice person, mostly.
So thank you very much. So you can see we've just got a tremendous breadth of experience up here, and people are showing up with, open hearts and open minds, being really vulnerable today to talk about their work and their service to the City of Ottawa. So again, I'm incredibly grateful. Chelsea, is there anything I've missed before I go into questions, or am I pretty good here? Okay. All right. So we're gonna do questions till about 8:25, unless we get through them all ahead of time. That's fine too. But if we can go till 8:25 and then we'll wrap up, that would be great. So how might we start? So David, you've got one here. So
somebody right here.
All right. So David's gonna get cracking, and then we'll start on the next side here, and then we'll go online. All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Christina, and I'd like to speak about the Garfield Park. So, hi, lady in the pink.
Already, okay. I'm all ready for you.
I have a 4-year-old Samoyed, and I've been frequenting that park since it was fenced about a year ago. I love it. I've made a lot of new friends. My dog has made friends. So one day when I showed up and the gates were gone, it was really disconcerting to see. And then since then, it's all we talk about at the dog park, and I'm just wondering why the gates were removed, because it was such a good thing. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of taxpayer dollars went into fencing, putting up the gates, and then a waste of dollars by having the gates removed, and then putting a lot of dogs at risk. And I know that Lane, I think, had mentioned at one point that dogs should be under the owner's control at all times, but then why bother fencing, right? I mean, so it just seems that it's been really a sad experience to have those gates gone. At the same time, though, the community has really band together. We've put up barriers, which I know were seen as hostile. Not at all. It was just to keep the dogs safe. So just wondering what happens going forward.
So I'm going to defer to the Department of Fun on this occasion. But just to clarify, oh, is that someone's phone? That's a lovely ring. I feel blessed all of a sudden. So the Dogs and Parks designation policy that I deal with, does not contemplate fenced off or fenced off leash areas. Sorry, yeah, we'll just give that gentleman a moment. Sir, are you good to go? So that nice lady can listen? Okay, so the fenced dog parks are not something that our policy contemplates because, oh my goodness. Okay, you wanted me to keep this to 90 seconds. I'm having trouble here.
Folks, if you could put your phones on mute, please, during the meeting, that would be really helpful. I just put mine on mute, as a matter of fact, because I forgot to.
Mine are muted. Maybe I should unmute, just in, anyway. So that policy doesn't contemplate fenced areas because of the cost implications and the design implications. We're not park designers. It's basically, it's either off leash, on leash, no dogs, or mixed. And we've done them all through consultation and so on, designated them. So I'm afraid I'm going to have to put my colleague here, Mr. Chenier, or Dan, on the hot seat about fenced areas.
Sure. Thanks, Christine. With respect to this park and for all our parks, where we've created dogs off leash enclosures, it was never the intent to turn over the entire park to just dogs. And I'm afraid what we have created by fencing Gilby Park with entrance blocks is that dogs were running all over the park and there was really no room left for humans. And so what happens next is there is a consultation. In every other park where we have this, part of the park is for dogs, a designated part, and then the other part people can enjoy without the fear of dogs running loose and potentially either actually bothering people or just the perception that big dogs are running loose in the park and that people can't use it. So what we're trying to do is create a balance between needs of dog owners and the needs of residents who want to use the park. And so there are plans up on Engage Ottawa that have 2 proposals. People are welcome to comment and to suggest modifications to those. And hopefully out of that we'll come up with something that's positive for the whole community.
So I'm just going to go ahead and sort of speak from my perspective too as the councillor, because I think that's helpful. So when I was first elected, I had 2 projects that came through a budget line that is dedicated to the councillor. It's called Cash in Lieu. We can only use it for parks. There were 2 projects. Now, maybe there was another one, but I remember 2. I'm pretty sure there was only the 2. One was the fencing at Garfield Park, and the other one was an accessible swing at Center Point, which is being installed as we speak. Those 2 projects, I, as a new councillor, looked at that and went, okay, well, that's been negotiated in good faith with the community. It's followed the process. And so I wouldn't have been inclined to halt the progress of that or undo it. I wanted to see that go through. Since the Garfield Park fencing has been installed, I've been on a journey. And what's happened is by installing that fence and putting the gates on it, we have, like, the park is actually not really conforming to dog park standards in the first place. And so we're trying to solve a problem. And the problem in my mind is that we didn't appropriately consult for the purposes of data collection that we would normally do with other projects. So that's why it's now going to Engage Ottawa. And being a mixed use designation, there's no mechanism to make it an exclusive dog park. We can't kick the mixed people part out of the park. The park stays mixed because it's green space that's calculated in the Parks and Rec master plan. There's so much square footage that happens for whatever density. So we can't like just boot out the people. No, I understand, but I mean like with the tools that we have formally, not with people actually doing it, but with the tools we have formally. So essentially by, you know, trying to come up with a design where we can preserve the gated park, so that people can still have the place where the dogs can be off leash with a gate that's preserved, but we can also maintain the desire line for people who want to cross that you can see in the Engage Ottawa pictures, and for other purposes moving forward with planning as we go forward. So I appreciate that we can do a back and forth, but in the interest of time, if you'd like to continue talking about this after the fact, as I said, we'll all be here, but we're not going to persist on one topic. Do you want to talk about Garfield Park? Okay, so if it has to do with a process for Garfield Park, I think what we'll do is we'll be able to meet after the meeting and we'll be able to talk through what our next steps are, just in the interest of time and the people that we have online. Okay? All right, thank you. So now we're on this side. And was there a question? Great, thank you so much.
Hi, thank you. My name's Spencer. My question's for Elizabeth and maybe Peter. I take my bike to work every day, so it's a commute for me, and I see hundreds of other people, if not thousands of other people using that bike route. I personally use the experimental pathway. And so I've looked into this, and research shows that people don't stop biking in the winter because it's cold. People stop biking because the infrastructure doesn't support it. So I'm wondering if there's any opportunity to expand snow clearing further west so that I can commute with my bike.
I think we're going to Chelsea after this answer.
Hi there, I'm going to take the question. Thank you very much. And I'm so glad that you're using our cycling facilities. It's very good to know. And comments like yours about the need to keep pathways cleared so that it can be used year round. We have to balance that with the operating cost of the snow clearing. But if more people speak about this, then that becomes a priority for council, and then we will look into it. Right now, we do have a network that is cleared, and it's generally around the downtown because that's where we get the higher numbers. And as we build more, then that expands. So to have a link perhaps from this area to downtown somehow, maybe we can look into that, but there is a cost implication, and that's why we haven't done more. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and jump in with a question from online. And just a reminder to those of you that are joining us, you can use the Q&A function to submit a question. They might not be visible right away, but I'll publish we're getting to them just to help us to stay organized. So from Joseph, and he says, last spring I participated in a town hall meeting organized by Councillor regarding the rebuilding of Centrepoint Drive with traffic calming measures and cycling lanes, and he'd like to know what the status of that project is.
Hi, thank you for your question about Centrepoint Drive. We've presently completed a traffic calming study in Centrepoint, and we've put together the functional design for all the various features that'll be on Centrepoint Drive. So there's various things, sidewalks, speed cushions, pedestrian crossings. So we're on it, and the next stage will be to send it to another department for its implementation.
And I can just add to that, the approval is sitting in my inbox, and it is a just as of today. So it's not like it's been sitting there long. But the reason why it's been sort of slower to go is because at the public consultation that we had last spring, there was a lot of very good feedback on the western intersection between Hemmingwood and Centrepoint. And so that actually encouraged that team to go back and look at their first proposals, their initial proposals, and improve upon them based on public feedback. So it has been delayed a little bit than what had been first proposed, but you're right, we are moving towards implementation. So that's very exciting.
Okay, I have a question back here.
Hi, my name's Rod Defoe, and what I'm going to be asking about is the big red and white elephant in the room known as OC Transpo. I read the article where our mayor came up with floating the political balloon of raising the tax levy almost 8% and bus pass users having a 75% raise in the cost of a monthly pass. Now, I pay $128 a month now. That would mean I'd be paying over $200 a month for service that's not even close to what I paid $125 a month when I lived in Barrhaven and had better service. Right now, this bus service is not worth $200 a month on a regular user. I've been using OC Transpo for 30 plus years. I am a public servant. I take it to work every day. And the routes, everything that's going on, you're making it worse by all your planning. The big elephant of LRT should be concentrated on, let's either do east, south, west, not try to do all three at once, all because the previous mayor and the previous council want a legacy. Well, they have one. It's a legacy of a system that doesn't work because the council decided to use a company that the feds designated as non-compliant. They bought a town so that they could build a site in Africa. Both companies running both LRT, the current expansion for 2 and for 1, are all subsidiaries of NC-Lavalin, which remember, the federal minister, justice minister, was actually left federal government because of it.
Hello? Yeah, thank you so much. So I just want to say, yeah, thanks for sticking with it. I know it's been, and if anybody, I mean, I think everybody has to think also about them driving around the city since the beginning of September and how miserable that has been. If you don't believe that those two issues are connected, I certainly do. We do need to have a transit system that works for everybody so that people can have real transportation choices in the city of Ottawa. It means that people have less congestion when they're choosing to go by car, but it means that they have a bus that goes where they need to go. I have to say, you know, it has been, I think that for College Ward, when we get the train at Iris and Algonquin, it's going to be an absolutely transformational experience. There was an interesting vote just a couple weeks ago at council. I was just chatting about it with somebody today, where we announced service cuts to the train 2 weeks before the return to work policy came back. And I was quite outspoken about that because I do think that we need to start talking about the reputational risk to our system. And nobody's talking about that. You know, we're always sort of looking at OC Transpo as some kind of cost recovery service, like some kind of like book balancing exercise. And certainly we do need to get that right. There is a financial model and there is a financial risk to it. But unless we look at it in terms of what do we want our city to aspire to? How do we want to grow in a way that is attractive for talent, for tourists, for everybody? We're not going to crack this just through, you know, raising fares. I will absolutely not be supporting any kind of further fare hike. I think there's something to be said for other cities who have had their financial model go belly up because of their low income pass spike. So, you know, that's actually being positioned right now as a risk to the financial model. We have too many people who are in poverty, who are reliant on transit, that are accessing passes that are discounted. That is a provincial and federal concern, and they should be subsidizing those passes so that we can get that out of the balance sheet. That's just absurd. So I certainly support the mayor in his call for federal and provincial support. The transit funding model has not worked, and it has not been working for several years, if you might even argue decades. However, I think what I see is that the province and the feds would like us to do a little bit of navel gazing here, and as you say, take some accountability for the steps that we've taken to artificially keep taxes low for over a decade and point the finger at transit when it doesn't work. I don't think that that demonstrates true leadership on the issue. So I think there are going to be some unpopular decisions to be made in the 2025 budget, no matter how you pass it or how you parse it, not just for OC Transpo, but for many of our other services right now. They're starving. But to put it on the backs of fare payers, I think is a losing proposition because they're already in their cars. So, you know, do we need to revisit David Hill's motion to have a subscription pass for, you know, public servants that are doing 3 days a week? That was voted down, or it was, you know, had some holes poked on it. I don't remember. Maybe that's something that needs to be revisited now that we see the chokehold that cars are having. We need to not punish off-peak time too. Like, that's crazy. And shift work time, Algonquin College is here. We've got kids running all over the place trying to get their exams, their classes, their shift work that are getting nailed. So yeah, I think we're in a real bind, and it's going to we need some real leadership on this issue, but I will not allow for it to come at the cost of you, sir.
Pulling by state, waiting to get by. You're not stopping. Why? It used to be before you paid for an express pass. That earned you the right to go straight to downtown. You don't have that, don't need that anymore. We haven't been doing that. And the other thing is, right now, people who work downtown as public servants or whatever, they're paying about $220 a month for a parking pass. We're going to pay $240 a month for unreliable service to go downtown. Or with me, I'll be paying $35 a month to work at National Defense Headquarters. Because you've now taken with this new route service, as soon as line 2 comes up and running, what used to be 1 bus for me to work will now be 2.
Okay, so we're not going to do too much call and response, but as a follow-up question in terms of I've answered the political part, are you able to sort of speak to the new routes and the empty buses? Because I think we do hear that concern frequently.
I can say a few things. Of course, I don't know the individual circumstance you're talking about. The new bus route network that will come into effect after the new O-Train line opens is meant to do a number of things. One of those things is more community connections, more connections within districts of the city. One is to take full advantage of the capacity of the new line, and that'll be mostly for people in the south, in Riverside South, Barrhaven. Make as many connections as possible so that that new line gets knitted right into the system. And the third major thing that the new route network is meant to do is to reduce operating costs in order to pay for the increased cost of running the train. So that plan came out of consultation that we did in 2023. We can't design a network that meets everyone's preferences, but it met many of the priorities that the people who participated in the consultation set, and also many of the priorities that council set for us. We don't have a date yet when that will go into effect, but we may soon. We may know more when we get a little closer to the opening of the new O-Train line. Again, I don't know the details, but buses that are passing in the peak direction during the rush hour, if there's a bus going by that's out of service, it's usually just positioning itself from where it finished the previous trip to where it has to go for the next trip. So if you're standing at, let's say here at Baseline Station, a bus might pass by that doesn't pick up at a baseline if it's moving to do a school trip or if it's moving to do something else. But we calibrate the in-service buses to be enough to pick everyone up who needs to go to where they're going. And if there's any reports of overcrowding or anything that doesn't seem right, we're happy to hear from anyone so we can look at it in detail.
You have to keep in mind also that transit only has two ways of creating revenue. It's either fares or taxes. One of the examples that other cities are trying to use is a parking levy. Right now, our parking levies legislated by the province can only pay for other parking projects. So that doesn't really create a modal shift, right? But that's a provincial legislation. So these are the types of inquiries that we need to be working on with other levels of government to get creative for revenue tools. Otherwise, we will continue to go into this spiral. And it's not just Ottawa. I have heard that, unfortunately, transit people like to look at each other and go, oh, at least we're not Ottawa. But, you know, it is cities across the country that are facing this same problem. And so we do need new revenue tools, and we need to be able to work with other levels of government to unlock some of those financial supports. So now we're going back. Where are we now? Me?
Your side lane.
Okay. Does anyone have a question on this side? Sure.
I'm another Lane. No relative. I'm Brian Lane. I've lived in this area for a long time, more than 50 years. So I know the buses have changed a lot, but I do have to echo the sentiment that, you know, sometimes things don't make any sense. I was driving home the other day from Merivale Mall to where I live, and it was mid-afternoon, and there were 3 buses in front of me. I'm an old retired guy. I don't care. I can wait. But the reality was it was a double bus in front of a double-decker bus, which had another double bus in front of it. And I thought, wow, you know, this is kind of strange. So knowing the way things work, if you haven't got enough money, you have to cut something if you can't get it. I mean, you can't put the fares up, you can't raise the taxes. So the alternative is to look at service. And I think that, unfortunately, people who are not on routes where they need to get downtown and that sort of thing, or pick up from schools, just have to be prepared to wait a little longer. I mean, yes, there is a question. And the question is, are we prepared to cut back that service? Because in reality, if you know that the bus is only going to come every half an hour, well, you know, you time yourself for it. Now, that's no good for getting people downtown in rush hours, but it's all right for local services. So I don't see any of that.
As I mentioned, one of the things that's built into the new bus route network that comes into effect after the O train line opens is a cost saving. That was part of Council's direction. You know, as the Councillor was talking about earlier, we have a giant gap between what it has cost to run transit service at the levels we've expected and the amount of money that's coming to us either from property taxes or from fares. Our ridership went, you know, through the floor to the floor at when the pandemic hit. Our ridership for a little while was down to 1/6 of what it had been just 3 weeks earlier. Now it's built back up, and we're at about 70%, but that's still, you know, over a quarter of our ridership from before the pandemic who haven't come back yet because they're primarily because they're working from home. So there's been reductions. There were some reductions in service in 2021. There's more reductions coming up in overall. Now it doesn't, you know, people will see it differently in different neighborhoods. But we have to follow what our customers need, and what our customers haven't needed over the last 4 years is a lot of capacity in and out of downtown, which is really what we used to need to have a lot of. Now we're having to be very careful. We'll add that back gradually. When council makes the difficult decisions this fall that the councillor was mentioning, they won't want to raise taxes, they won't want to raise fares, they won't want to cut service. But apart from funding from senior levels of government, those will be the only three choices they have.
Yes. So I think that TransLink out of BC has been very upfront to say we're going to be slashing and dashing services if we don't see any changes. You know, that's something that corporation has been really upfront about. And, you know, not to sort of beat up on myself, but, you know, we also passed a transit budget with a $39 million hole in it in 2023, hoping that other levels of government would fill it. So, you know, we have made choices here at the council table to sort of reap what we sow. So anyway, this has been very sad. But I think it is also honest. And so I appreciate you sort of, you know, speaking plainly about what challenges you're experiencing, Pat. Did you want to go to one online, Chelsea?
Sure. So we have a question from a resident that lives in Briar Green, and they'd like to know if there's any further action being done about street racing. So this is something our office hears about quite a bit as well in this neighborhood. They say they know that a new speed camera was installed on Greenbank recently, and apparently Ottawa police are conducting blitzes, but it hasn't seemed to stop the street racing that's pretty consistent on Friday and Saturday nights. But we don't have OPS here with us this evening, but maybe our transportation folks could play rock, paper, scissors and decide who takes this one. Thank you.
So the Ottawa Police Service, they assign enforcement officers based on complaints received from residents. So largely based on complaints received. So you can make reports to Ottawa Police via their non-emergency number or through their online reporting tool. Essentially, those requests get generated into a heat map, and the sergeant in charge of traffic enforcement will assign his available resources based on those hotspots. So if you're not making calls, your area of the city won't show up on that map, and they will assign their resources to bright red areas of the city. And you know, beyond that, the ASC program is rolling out. I don't know how many more locations this year, but Krista will know. But you know, that program is expanding, so that is there to take some of the pressure off Ottawa Police in certain areas.
Yeah, so as Riley mentioned, the automated speed enforcement program is used to help enforce speed limits on the city roadways. Currently, approval from council has been to implement around schools and playgrounds. We are undertaking a couple of pilot projects to evaluate the effectiveness on higher speed roadways, such as Hunt Club, Walkley, King Edward, to name a few, as well as a pilot in the rural areas on the rural village roadways. But until those pilots are completed, the focus has been on schools and playgrounds. So we will have 60 cameras in by the end of this year, with another 15 to 25 planned for next year, but those sites have not been selected yet.
Just wanted to comment. So, you know, to me, it's not lost on me that when OPS assigns resources, we have way fewer people in College Ward than they do in Barrhaven. You know, Barrhaven, I think, is like 80,000 people to hit 100,000 people, you know, by 2030 or something. I'm not exactly sure what the numbers are, but you know, the frequency with which Barrhaven hits the button, you know, versus us, because we're just lower density, kind of can skew some of those resources. Now, we have been advocating very strongly to the Ottawa Police Service about street racing because it's crazy. And we have asked for them they have asked us, what streets do you want to see enforced? And so certainly don't hesitate to reach out to our office if there's something that you can witness. Keep in mind, they don't enforce along the Queensway, right? That's OPP. So sometimes, like where I live, so I live at sort of the Maitland on-ramp, I don't exactly know, you know, if they're coming down Maitland or if they're flying on the Queensway. Like I can't pretend to know. I'm pretty sure it's Maitland, you know. So I say Maitland, I say Baseline, I say Greenbank, I say Woodruff, I say Maryvale. Yes, thank you so much. So, you know, we've put all those streets in because those are sort of the biggies. Some of the other things that I believe that the traffic services is playing with is some new technologies to sort of see how people, don't be frightened, it's kind of Big Brother, but whether there's apps that are on your phone, whether it's insurance apps, you drive nicely and you get insurance discounts. So, how they could use your phone to track your speed so that they can identify hot spots that people are racing without actually seeing people there, so they know where to allocate resources to move away from this sort of resident reporting problem that I'm describing. But it's crazy. I used to work at the Maryvale and Meadowlands Wendy's. That was my first job. And like, they love, to park their cars there and walk around the cars and look at the cars. And it is right here in College Ward, isn't it? So anyway, yeah. So all this to say, don't hesitate to reach out to our office too, and we can, bang that drum with you.
It's part of it.
I actually got a chance to talk with Lane and Chelsea before about this. My name's Jennifer Stoyle. I moved to the Centrepoint neighborhood about 4 years ago. And one of the first things that I did was walk to the Centrepoint library here at Ben Franklin Place. And the kids, they were 3 and 6 at the time. They saw the fountain and they're like, and they wanted to jump in. So we took off our shoes, we started wading in the water, and then a commissioner came out and said, no, we can't go in the water. Skip ahead 4 years, and I see another mom there with her little kids, also in the water, and now there's signs up saying no swimming. I think the surest sign of unmet need is when you have to put up signs telling people not to do something. So when I'm kind of looking at everything that's happening in the Centrepoint neighborhood, I think there's development going in for Algonquin Station. So I'm like, maybe there'll be some money there that we can maybe, I guess what I'm saying is vision here. I grew up in Mississauga, and in front of their library, they had this plaza that was gorgeous. Everyone wanted to go there. It was essentially a very, very large splash pad in the summer and an ice rink in the winter. And I've seen them in Calgary, Edmonton, Ajax. Other cities have done this. And I think with the heat going up, this might ping on the, maybe we need some more cooling off places. But what I really love is Ben Franklin Place. When this neighborhood was initially conceived, it was the hub of the community. It was meant to be the place. And we got people coming in from all over, Centrepoint Library, Meridian Theatre. So I think this is the place where people are already coming, particularly with their kids. And I think it would be like a real gem if we could actually convert what is right now a place for geese and geese species. There's no shade. No one wants to sit there. It's something you look at as you drive by. If we could actually convert that into a spot where people would want to come, they're already coming here, but even more so as a draw. And so I guess my question in there is, I see all the people here and I'm like, this could be like asset management. This could kind of secondary planning, but I think that's kind of zoning. This is the fund department. So you talked about consultations and stuff like that. I love the idea. I think everyone will love the idea. How do we get started?
Thanks. And I kind of agree with you that the fountain that's there was put in a long time ago, and we know that the rink itself is approaching the end of life. If you've been wading in the pond, you will know that the cement in the bottom is fritting away, and that it doesn't have many years left. I believe that asset management is working on renewing the pond itself. The ice plant was redone, I'm going to say 2 years ago, but the actual pond and the pipes underneath it that refrigerate it for ice in the winter, which is a very popular, my office overlooks and it is a super popular. So I think we'd want to retain that. But is there something that we can do to make it more user-friendly year-round and have an activity for the kids? I see children and parents wading in it, the water, because we have to put so much chemical into it to deal with the goose poop and all of the other things really isn't fit for swimming, and so that's why there's an attempt to keep people out of it as much as possible. But I think when we do redo that, it would be worth having a consultation, engaging the community to see what might work, and some kind of water feature that kids could actually enjoy is a possibility, and as part of a renewal of that.
I can jump in terms of the secondary plan. Jennifer, great idea. I love that idea of connecting Centrepoint Park to the water feature here, and then further east right up to Algonquin Station. That's certainly something we'll look at as part of the Algonquin Station secondary plan. Right, so maybe back up a little bit. Secondary plans in the city, so these are comprehensive planning studies that we undertake for specific parts of the city. Those are typically parts of the city that are growing quickly, where we're expecting a lot of growth and change in the coming years and decades. Typically, those are around our O-train stations. In recent years, the plans have focused on those O-train stations, and the current plans do. We've also done secondary plans for main streets. So the reason secondary plans are so important is because they actually get embedded as part of the official plan. So they're volume 2A of the official plan. So that way they actually have the same sort of legislative status as the official plan, and the policies in the secondary plans actually override those in the regular volume 1 of the secondary, of the official plan. So what we do is we go into these areas, we do a very detailed study and look at what's needed. We anticipate growth. We work with community associations, with major landowners, and of course the councillors, and we come up with a plan to guide that growth and change and figure out what's needed. And sometimes that's parks, and sometimes that means identifying where new parks can go. We don't get into the nitty-gritty about what's going to be in the parks yet. There's a whole separate exercise that Dan's team looks after. But yeah, so parks is certainly one of those things. Pathways is another. Certainly dealing with heights and densities and that kind of thing as well. So your suggestion is exactly the combination of connectivity and parks. And connecting it to the station and to the station area. That's absolutely the kind of thing we'll be looking at.
Thanks for that, Peter. So right now we're just undertaking trying to propose the study limits for what is going to be the Algonquin Station secondary plan. It's going to include the 100 Constellation, the whole parking lot section here that the city is going to be acquiring in 2026, as well as some surrounding areas. I might also make mention at this point, Algonquin College, the proper college, is also undertaking a capital asset plan, and we'll be hosting an open house with them November 4th. And so they'll have some, we've suggested to them that they have like some boards, and you come in at your leisure, and you just chat about what they have planned, because they're looking at, you can see them growing like crazy, right? And of course the pressure on student housing is quite serious. So they're examining that. So we're going to make sure that that's communicated out to all of you guys broadly, so you can sort of get a taste of that. And they have one of our city planners that sat on that process with them. And similarly, they will be informing as a stakeholder our secondary plan. So we really are just trying to make it, super holistic, because it could be an absolute gem. It already is. I don't want to undermine the vision for Centrepoint and the secondary plan that came before. However, with LRT now coming in, we really do, and Algonquin is the end. It's called the terminus. So they put in a little extra money in there to make it pretty. So it's going to be a really nice spot. And I think that we really have an opportunity to envision something quite attractive, inclusive, multi-use, modern. I'm very excited for it. So I hope you'll all stay tuned for that. Yes. All right.
Lane, it's on your side.
Okay. Yes. Okay, great.
Hi. First off, thanks for doing this, and thanks for everybody from the city for being here. My name's Dan. I wanted to ask a quick follow-up question about the traffic calming study. So, traffic calming study, Centrepoint traffic calming study. So that project consultation, that's been ongoing for years and years and years. 2016, at least that's when I first became interested in it. But in context, my daughter was a newborn at the time when I first went to it. So, you know, it's been going on for a while. Every once in a while I follow up with the city. A few months ago when I last followed up, I was told about 2 years away until shovels go in the ground. And that seems to be the ongoing story. We're perpetually 2 years away. Public transit terminus, that's coming. There's going to be a lot more traffic, presumably in the city. I think it would be problematic if we don't get it done by then. Coming up on 10 years, can I get a commitment from anybody here that, you know, we're actually at the end of this and we're actually going to get shovels in the ground and get it done?
Hi, Dan. Thank you for your question about Centrepoint traffic calming study. So I worked with my colleague Kunjan Gamir. Perhaps you know Kunjan. And so the functional design is in the process right now of being approved. Councillor Johnson mentioned it. It's in her inbox, and we're working on that. And then next year it'll go to design, preliminary and detailed design, and it's the intent for it to go to construction in 2026, pending funding.
So yeah, that is 2 years away. But I would like to say that you have my political commitment to getting it done. I think there was a few bumps in the road between 2016 and when I was elected that we've been able to since iron out. And the other part about this that I find that is exciting is that with the Section 37 funds from 19 Centrepoint, which is the building on Centrepoint here, a chunk of it was earmarked for traffic calming. So we were able to apply those funds into the existing project to create more permanent structures versus just paint. And so even though you are waiting a little longer, it will be more meaningful and it will be more impactful. So I promise I will go sign that. We're just kind of hesitating because what we really want to see, I don't know who's here that can take this away, but we're also trying to make sure that the pedestrian crossing at Centrepoint and Hemmingwood on the eastern side sees some improvement, because if the sun's hitting it the right way, cars can't see anybody pressing the button, and I've seen people blow through that a bunch of times. So we're just trying to make sure that those comments are in there, because right now it's not being considered as part of this study. But I promise it won't get stuck in like a bureaucratic quagmire.
Over to Chelsea.
Okay. So we've got a question from Christy, and she says, I wanted to say first how much I enjoy our new stormwater pond and surrounding area. So that's over at Pinecrest. And we still don't know what to call it. It's a very long name. But it's so she's asking, she's a little surprised that there's no community space or an area that could bring a family together for a picnic, reading, etc. Only 1 or 2 benches. So she's asking whether there will be additional amenities added that would make it more similar to Centrepoint Park, and specifically if there will be waste bins added. Maybe Mary Ellen?
Yeah, I can answer that. So the Pinecrest Stormwater Management Pond was built as a bundled scope with LRT, but it kind of came to us as a package with a bow on it. It was essentially a 99% design that I think had gone through quite an extensive public consultation at the time. And then those packages were kind of just given us to build. So we've been working on that for the last 5 years, and we're very happy to see that the landscaping's in place, the multi-use pathways are open, and it's looking much better than I think it did for a couple of years there as just a big silt pond. So I think kind of any future changes to that would kind of have to go back to the city for consultation. The land itself is owned by NCC. The city has negotiated just easement agreements to be able to build the stormwater maintenance or stormwater management pond. And so kind of anything that would be done to change that area would have to be done in conjunction with the city and NCC.
Hi, thank you. My name's Glenna. I'm a resident of City View neighborhood, and my question in particular is about zoning in my neighborhood. I live just parallel to Baseline on Granton. And what normally, and I know my neighborhood has been a lot of bungalows coming down with 2 houses going in, detached. But I am concerned about a property that is being built across the street, basically from us. There has been no communication since 2023 about the property and what's going to be going in. We understood it as 2 developments, but now it's kind of a larger whole than 2 single homes, and sort of rumor is that it's a bit more of a rooming house situation. I am all for development and fully appreciate that I do live in the Greenbelt and do live in this area that it's going to get busier and things are happening, and I'm all about it. But I think the concern was the lack of communication, and some of the other things that are happening with the build is like the giant digger was driven down the road, not floated. Trees have come down that I'm pretty sure should have stayed. And just sort of that uncomfortable feeling. I'm concerned about water, I'm concerned about the infrastructure. If you're going to put that many people, that many doors, basically, in a little tiny neighborhood, and it's a dead end, already have a problem with parking because we sort of back on to, like, we're at the end of the street and back on to the Maples apartment building and nearby Algonquin. So we already have a problem with parking on our street, which is fine, I'm all about it, but we witnessed a fire in the house that was torn down, and the fire truck could barely get through to put the fire out on my street. So just very concerned as to what's going on. And this builder is also on 95 Rita, from my understanding. So just concerned about zoning. Is this going forward, this type of development in this area?
Yes, so I know that Heather has been quite actively involved with all of the bylaw infractions that have been occurring with those builders, and we are pursuing that conversation with building code as well to understand, if we have bad actors that are doing X, Y, Z on one property, how building permits are issued or looked at in further properties. I think from what I understand, this building is an example of 3 units as of right. So Bill 23, the province of Ontario, Bill 23 was enacted in 2023, pardon me. And so now they have all properties that have enough space and can meet the setbacks can have 3 units as of right. And so we do see a couple neighborhoods in our ward that would meet those criteria. And so when something is 3 units as of right, it doesn't go through a zoning application, it goes through a building permit application, and perhaps Scott can speak to that.
So I'll be able to answer some of that. It's more to the building code side than it is the zoning side of it. So there's not a restriction on bedrooms, like if you were to design a home and you wanted to put 10 bedrooms, so to speak. Now, we're all human, and we know that if you see something that kind of looks suspicious, an office that has a closet, it's probably going to be a bedroom. So we do look at that when we're reviewing it, and we question it. We'll try and get evidence to support what we think it might be. And somebody could be telling the truth, and maybe that is what they want to put in, because we get those reports all the time. We think this might be student rentals, this might be whatever, and it could be very factual, but we have to be able to prove that that's what they're doing. So if they're building as per plan, they put in, their 3 units, each of them have 4 bedrooms. We issue occupancy based on what was approved on plan. If they've changed it or the inspector's there and they see that there's actually stuff to support it being a bedroom, then we call it out exactly as that. But people who want to be kind of mischievous with it know enough to leave that stuff out until we're gone, and then it comes back in as a complaint and we go back to enforce it that way.
Wayne, question on your side? And I should mention, I have a really long list, and we only have a half hour left.
Hi there. I'm just going to repeat what everyone else has talked about, which is traffic. I live on a residential street that's just off of Maryville, and anyone who's been on Maryville knows how busy it is. So people take the liberty to take our street because they're upset about having to wait on Maryville, and then they speed down our street. We have no sidewalks. We have no street lamps. My kids play on the street. My son's out playing hockey, and I'm worried he's going to get hit by a car. I just saw a bicycle get hit just at the corner of Withrow and Pender last week, and I saw a car accident at the other corner of Withrow and Maryville like 3 weeks ago. So it's just a matter of time before somebody gets killed. And I did email about this, and I got an email back saying that the average speed is 32 kilometers per hour, but where the speed board is exactly where people slow down to turn around a corner. We personally know it's higher than that. It's 50 to 60 sometimes. I've seen people going 60 down our street. So I guess squeaky wheel gets the grease. That's what I'm kind of, or squeeze out there. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just concerned about this. It's a matter of time before somebody gets hit.
I'll answer quickly, just because there's parts of that that are really, budgetary in nature. So certainly, what I brought to the mayor in my budget conversations for 2025 were exactly the gaps in policy that our older neighborhoods are facing. We don't have a policy to put in street lamps. There's no program, I should say. It's a program, we don't currently have a program to put in street lamps in older neighborhoods. Never mind having any money in it. It hasn't been created. And that's something that the general manager of Public Works has said, yeah, maybe that's a gap. So I brought it to the mayor and I said, listen, there is acknowledgement from your senior staff, your senior leadership team, that there are gaps in the policy and the programs that we need to address. I brought that to them last year. I'm hoping at least to get the program named this year so that we can start putting money into it, because we were not built to the same standards that newer neighborhoods have been. And it's extremely frustrating. Similar to sidewalks, so Haran is here. And one of the things we haven't talked about is the ditch rehabilitation study in City View. Ditches are historically incompatible with sidewalks because you need to be able to have the drainage to go into the ditch. But I have had some commitments from Haran's team and from Kunjan's team to consider maybe piloting some sort of new sidewalk infrastructure in City View so that we can get both, because it's not acceptable to have dark streets in the winter. I mean, in the daytime, in the summer too, but in the winter when it's 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you want to walk home or you want your kid to get some fresh air after dinner or whatever, and it's dark and you've got cars blowing past. So, I just wanted to say that there's going to be some conversations perhaps about data, and certainly we're always happy to, continue taking data. We try and space it out every 2 or 3 years in a particular location. Maybe we're not asking the right questions. I know that City View put forward 10 spots this past year that we've been looking at, waiting until school comes back for some of them so that we can have the volumes associated with students. But part of that, again, is a budgetary pressure. We don't have a program that creates, when you rebuild a road now and you dig out the pipes, it's rebuilt to a 30-kilometer-an-hour standard. So you'll see that on, let's say, Bel Air and Field, Checkers, so on through Bel Air, where you've got bump outs and you've got speed cushions and you've got PXOs. That's the standard. But we're caught in this middle where they don't plan to rip up our roads for, probably my kid's lifetime and yours. So in the Transportation Master Plan Part 1, we actually advocated very strongly to the VV's team and did see a complete streets policy put in there that acknowledges that there's a gap. But you know who wants it now? The urban councillors. And I don't want them to have it, because they're saying Kent Street also needs it, and Kent Street's not planned to be rebuilt. And it's like, but look at all the other rebuilds you've been getting. Get out of here. So VV, take note. I don't want the urban councillors to get that. That was my advocacy that did that. So we'll watch for it. So anyway, all this to say there's some serious gaps, and I am fighting very strongly. I care very deeply. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old in a slope driveway that goes right into a T intersection. It's absolutely bananas. And my daughter doesn't listen, Anyway, so we can certainly talk about data. Here, I'll put one for, I'll talk a little bit more about it though. So the other part of the data collection that's been making me mad, not directed to you, but directed to a resource problem, is that we used to collect data for 48 hours on a given site, but now we collect it only for 24 because those machines need to move all around the city because everybody is stressed about traffic. We don't have enough machines, whatever those counters are, armadillos, whatever they are, we don't have enough machines, we don't have enough bodies, but everybody cares about traffic now. That's, again, a budgetary pressure, but it affects the data we collect. They'll argue that it's still good enough, and perhaps it is, but it's half as good, in my opinion, respectfully. Of course you want more resources, right? Krista's also the new boss of this team, so I'm just looking at her a lot going like, tell me what you need and let me go fight for it. So anyway, all this to say I get really worked up about this issue. Thank you for bringing it up. There's total gaps that we should own as a council, but then also I know these guys are stretched to the limit. So we're trying to share them, but I don't like to share them at all. Do you want to add to that, or are you feeling good?
So the speed display boards are information tool. It's a feedback tool for motorists. So the data, they do collect data. We just don't use that data for any decision-making purposes. So we use a different kind. Yeah. So we use the armadillos for our speed collection. They're much more accurate. The problem with the speed display boards is, one, they influence driver speeds. They're one directional. The placement sometimes can capture cars slowing for a stop sign and then accelerating. So yeah, they are useful, but not for the data that they provide.
Yeah, so just further to that, that's annoying. I know you think that's annoying because you think that it actually goes into a cloud and then someone can download something from the cloud. The cloud has not been working. The cloud is not working. One, they don't all have the capacity to do the cloud. And then secondly, the cloud doesn't always work. It's not reliable. The weather gets in the way, the speed board breaks, whatever. I put in an inquiry about this, didn't I? I put in an inquiry about this to try and bring it to the fore that there is a public expectation of what speed boards do in terms of decision making, because it is not currently doing that. And one of the things in there was asking whether or not we were moving forward to try and investigate speed boards that actually did talk to people. And where did we end up on that?
So we are working on a project to establish a cloud service. We used to use the vendor of the boards itself to provide that service for us, but we're working on an in-house solution. I don't have the exact timing or dates of that right now, but we can certainly get that information back to you if you're interested.
I think we're really interested. The vendor was not, it wasn't working out. Yeah, so we are going back to it, but I appreciate your concerns about the speed boards, and I appreciate your transparency on, where we still need to go with that. All right.
Chelsea.
Okay.
Okay. We've got a question from Liz and Tom, and they say there's a push for housing infill in the area, so properties are being severed. An adjacent property to us has been vacant with no development for over 2 years now. Is there a time limit that a property like this can remain vacant?
I can answer a little bit of that. So if they haven't actually applied to do any development on it, there's no restriction or forcing them to do something. An incentive that is in portions of the city would be demolition control. So if it was applicable to that lot, they would have to actually have a new application, a permit approved for the new development before they could actually start a demolition. That doesn't apply to all areas of the city. So I'm going to guess that this one wouldn't be in that demolition control area. And that's why that it would still be vacant. They do have to commence construction, so if they have a permit to do that work on that lot, they would actually have to start it within a year. Otherwise, the permit gets revoked, and there's a financial penalty to them in doing so as well.
I'll add to that a little bit in terms of the city has a newer bylaw. It's been around since 2022, so that's pretty new for us. Implementation took us about a year. And that is the vacant property bylaw. So if you have addresses like that, we would encourage you to report them online through 3011, through the councillor's office, somehow get that information to us. And at bylaw, we have a dedicated team that takes these on, and then they will ensure that the property is registered as a vacant property, and it's an annual permit. So again, yes, it is the rationale or the policy decisions behind that is to encourage development on these lots. So it's a $1,500 per annual fee on top of the vacant unit tax, and can be applicable as well. So we work in conjunction with that team.
Hello, Lane and City of Ottawa. Thank you for holding this session. My name is Karima, and I'm a resident of Centrepoint. I have two comments. Number one is I have recently seen that the sidewalks, when they're getting repaired, instead of using the concrete, they are using asphalt. It doesn't look that nice. And honestly, I don't know whose idea is it, but I really don't think it looks nice. I've never seen it in any other city, okay? My second point, Elaine, is regarding the Centrepoint development. You already know from last time when the Centrepoint residents met you, we raised concern over the Hemmingwood. I live actually right in front of Hemmingwood, and at nighttime, I can tell you I hear so many cars, especially in wintertime, including the snow trucks. They're hitting the sidewalks because it narrowed so much that it's hard for the trucks to go through. And also for the bicyclist. I'm a bicyclist. I think I have commented on your Facebook as well that biking on Hemmingwood is hazardous. While all the bulge outs you have done, we are forced to actually go in the middle of the lane. I'm worried and scared to go. I go on the sidewalk, which is not the right thing to do. My concern is regarding the redevelopment of Centrepoint, the whole of Centrepoint. I think if you are reconsidering it and there is a new design in play, my humble request is to consider dedicated bike lanes. I've just returned, as you know, many of my friends and neighbors know, from Amsterdam, and that is a biking heaven capital. If you know, please see the videos, I beg you. They have like not only colored sidewalks just for the bicyclists and the pedestrians to keep both of them safe. Centrepoint, please. We already know there has been several accidents. Please consider the biking safety for the kids because they do bike. And it's very important if we are developing it, if that can be considered. Thank you.
Okay, so all good points. I'll just let you know, yeah, the asphalt patching, it's very unsightly, and it is certainly, a way to get to all of the cracks that they need to fill by law in a short amount of time. We're able to submit, if you see, this is another good one, so if you're able to let us know if you see problem, like really deteriorated sidewalks, we get to put our list forward to Public Works. There's no Public Works folks here today, unfortunately. But we get to submit so many, and it's across the city. There's a very small budget to actually renew the sidewalk panels. And I think that right now it costs about $1,000 a meter or something like that. I don't know if anybody can confirm that, but that was what it was when we were inquiring about a year ago. And so it is very costly and very competitive. Again, for me, like it's talking about, there are very few, if any, policies within the City of Ottawa that are geographically sensitive. It's all fair, 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 equal instead of equity, right? So Barrhaven might get the same amount of sidewalk repair projects as we do, but Barrhaven was built so much earlier than we did. Like, is it really so bad? I don't mean to pick on Barrhaven, but there was a sidewalk renewal that got me annoyed there. Similarly, the traffic calming budget that councillors have discretion over, we each get the same amount, even though, if you were to go downtown, you would suggest that congestion, keeps traffic slow. They get the rebuilds, so they get, those added infrastructure, permanent infrastructure. They have the LRT, they have the bus network. Do they really require just as much money for flex stakes as us that are driving, 75 kilometers an hour down a 50-kilometer road? I'm not sure. But politically, who's going to do that? I've asked my urban neighbors, like, you want to give me some? They have told me no. you know. So it is a challenge, and our rural companions, you know, are feeling it too, because they see a lot of fatal accidents. You know, they have the highest frequency of fatal accidents on their roads because of the speeds, but they don't get any special treatment in our policies either. So I've argued with them that in fact we in the outer urban and they as the rural should be banding together to talk about that geographic sensitivity. So not a great answer, but an answer nonetheless.
And we're getting bike lanes on Centerpoint.
Oh yes, and that is actually true, yes.
So a question on your side, Lane?
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if this really applies to anybody here. I'm hoping it does, but I want to ask about the planes. I've been 25 years in Bel Air, and when I bought my house, there were no planes going overhead. I'm one of the few people, I think, that actually miss COVID in some ways, and planes is one of them. Because holy cow, I had book club at my house last night, and we could barely hear each other for half of the book club meeting. There are, well, you must hear it too, although I swear to God it goes right over my house. You can stand on the roof and reach the planes. They're that close to our house. My whole house shakes. You know, we live right in the city, and should planes be flying over a city that low? Like, and there was, I don't know if you heard it last week, but there was one, I think it was about 7:30 at night, or was it 10:30? I can't, there's so many. It was craziness. It was wild. It scared me. I jumped up and ran out of my house. It was that bad. With my knees shaking. And if you look at our Facebook page, there were many in the Bel Air community who felt the same.
That's a federal issue, and it's temporary.
I can just read what I looked up on the Ottawa Airport webpage. I know nothing about this other than the words I'm going to read. It says, notice, temporary air traffic changes. Runway 0725 east-west is required to be closed for construction September 26th to 27th, temporarily increasing air traffic over the communities to the north and south of the airport. And there's a whole article here if you go to yow.ca.
I do know that new builds actually have to have a study done in the flight path to demonstrate how they will have sound protections. I don't know when that was instated, but I do know that new builds have to provide that study, which is interesting. I don't know if it was done in the Compo days, but certainly now. Probably no planes, right? Yeah, exactly. So yes, write your MP. Okay, to Chelsea.
Okay, so we've got two questions from Gabrielle, but looking at the time, we are coming close to the end of our meeting, so I'm just going to read out one. And she asks about the new disc golf installation at Centerpoint Park. So she says, every few feet, pedestrians are alerted to flying discs, yet many pedestrians are seniors and concerned about the discs flying about. Should pedestrians not have the right of way? Equally, it is disconcerting to see so much signage in what should be a relaxing environment. I'm wondering, maybe Dan, if you could speak to the new disc golf course, please.
First of all, it's the first I hear of this, so certainly something that we can look at. We have received a lot of positive feedback about the disc golf. In fact, Centerpoint Park is becoming a destination of choice for disc golfers. It's perhaps a growing pain that we need to look at, what signage we do have and how we might manage the conflict between park disc golf users and pedestrians and see if we can do something. But we're getting requests to duplicate Centerpoint in other parks now because of how great people find it.
Frisbee.
Yeah, it's picture a golf course, but instead of getting, and there are nets that you get the disc into and go around the circuit. Yeah, a Frisbee.
Okay, I have
a question about rent. People are older and they're moving out and they're selling their houses, and these developers are buying them. And they're taking their single family dwellings, turning them into student housing. They don't cut the grass. There's boats in the front yard. There's cars in the laneway that have tires that are flat. They've been sitting there for over a year. Now, there's ticks and fleas. Everybody's got dogs now since COVID. Well, how do we control this? I mean, we can't say you can't buy this house because you're going to be a developer, but the house behind me is empty and there's 6 rooms in the basement and there's no bathroom down there.
311. Yes, so there's a.
If you want to report something online, you want a picture. Well, not everybody likes you to take a picture of their house.
It's a suggestion. You can still place the complaint without the picture. So to answer your question fully, we have several bylaws that address property maintenance issues that you're speaking of, zoning bylaw as well. So we, obviously that's our team, continues to enforce it. We are similar in nature to the answer we heard earlier around police, around stats-based, response-based. But so again, that's why I do say 311 versus reporting it online or over the phone, continue to do that. And we do send our officers out to ensure that the standards of the property are met. It depends on the zoning of the property, but typically no. It depends on how big the boat is, or again, it's the zoning bylaw, so there's very different layers and depending on the size of the property, depending on the size of the boat. But typically in most residential areas, no. Because especially if it's over 18 feet, et cetera, then there certainly is a zoning violation there.
I will say that the bylaw reports that we've been getting, we get quarterly bylaw reports for the number of calls, and property standards over 2023 were much higher than 2022. So we do know that it's an encouraging issue. It is complaints-based. Bylaw is always a cost recovery complaints-based department. And we do have, a lot of competition for bylaw. So certainly something that many of us have brought up enforcement in terms of a budget pressure to get bylaw to actually ask for how many people they need to do the work that is expected of them. Okay, so where are we now?
Question on your side.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Margot, and I know we're not to bring up the same topics, but I do want to address traffic and safety, including on smaller streets. I'm in Leslie Park, and Monterey has been an issue, I would say, for about 20 years that residents have been raised in terms of speeding and safety. And while the data may not show average speed of being much higher than the speed limit, the incidents that we hear as residents are alarming, including an accident that I heard where a car nearly went into a house, and their young son had been on the lawn. So if it had been a few hours earlier, there would have been someone killed. So I understand budget constraints, but what can we do about concerns that have been lasting for decades and residents continually raising them? And we're not really seeing anything that is having an impact on changing speeds of cars. And we are running, that's parallel to baseline. So increased traffic, it's a cut-through area. It's not going to get better without intervention. So just a question of what can we do?
Riley's the lead on that, so.
So the city has 2 main programs for traffic calming. One is the neighborhood traffic calming program. So my team will collect speed data, and then we apply that data against the policy. So to qualify, the average speed has to be 45 kilometers an hour or more, and the 85th percentile has to be 55 kilometers per hour or more. So pretty high threshold. So, Center Point, for example, qualifies, just to give you context in terms of roadway characteristics. The other program is the temporary traffic calming program. So that gives annual funding to the councillor to implement lower cost measures. So, speed display boards, pavement markings, flex stakes, those kind of things. That program is, I would say, kind of stale in new ideas, but we are trying new concepts. And, you know, working with the councilor's office, we try and engage the willingness to try something different. So that could be an option here. We have collected speed data in College Ward in a few locations this year. If your street hasn't had recent data collection, you can send a request in and we'll collect new data. Most of those programs do target the majority of drivers. The outliers, the high-end speeders are typically for enforcement. So those are the drivers that have no regard for their own safety or others. So Ottawa Police reporting, again, is a good tool. The more information you can give, the better. So if you can get a plate number, if you can get a, you know, time of day, direction of travel, that helps when they're assigning the resource to make sure the resource is there at the correct times. Ottawa Police will, if you get a plate number, will contact the registered owner of the vehicle to have a discussion about observations made about that vehicle. And that goes on the vehicle's record. So if that person is pulled over for a speeding offense somewhere else in the city or that street at a different time, the officer is less likely to give a warning.
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump in and add to that just because Riley is maybe a little bit less familiar with that specific street. But we did hear from your neighbors in your community and especially that resident that the collision happened in front of their home on Monterey. It's obviously a very, very scary thing to experience. And we tried really hard to coordinate a summer meeting with like the groups of neighbors and the traffic, temporary traffic calming coordinator and our specialist. And we were having a tough time finding a time that worked for the neighbors' schedules. But we have asked staff to develop a traffic calming plan for that street. So like there's a couple of challenges. They did add a painted edge line, which kind of like visually narrows the roadway, but there's also a lot of on-street parking on Monterey. So when you're looking at those kind of self-enforcing measures like flex stakes, center line flex stakes in the middle of the road, that might mean taking away parking, which then has consequences for neighbors that rely on that, right? Because they have more than one vehicle and a single lane driveway. So solutions aren't always simple to implement, but like we know that that's really important and it's very high on the radar. By the time that came in, our funds for this season had already been allocated, but we'll have a plan back by early next spring, and Monterey is very high on the list.
Next question is yours, Chelsea.
Okay, give me a moment to scan, please. Okay, this one came through a couple of times, and the resident would like to know if the city has the budget to buy out NCC lands for the benefit of city programming and space.
I'll go for it.
The city has a lot of NCC land that it uses for programming. The Sportsplex is on NCC land. Mooney's Bay is NCC land. By and large, they will not sell to us, but they will do long-term leases with us. The reason we have so many now is that years ago they would do nominal leases, so $1 a year for 100 years. Treasury Board has told them to move those leases to market value. So it now makes it, and the city is negotiating back and forth with the NCC. As an example, we had one park that was $1 a year that the market rate was $374,000 a year. That's an expensive park. So we are generally not looking to do that because by and large it's too expensive. In some wards, we are buying private lots and turning them into parks where that is possible. And if the NCC did have a specific situation, then we could certainly look at it. There is some interest in some wards, depending on the quality of the land and what purpose it would serve.
And one more from my side and call it a day.
Yes, I was just wondering if would it be very expensive for the city prioritizes bike lanes. For the city to prioritize pedestrians and cyclists at designated bicycle intersection crosswalks. For example, if I'm going from Algonquin College past Ben Franklin Place to Centerpoint Drive, there's a crosswalk button, I hit it, 10-second priority, I'm across. If I use the same pathway and I come up from Iris to Woodruff Avenue, and I cross right at the stormwater pond that you just built, at the fire station, that's 2 minutes or a minute and a half. On those type of, where it goes from a designated path to a designated path,
right.
Would it be possible for the city to prioritize pedestrians and cyclists? It's a very small bone that you could throw to the cyclists.
Yeah, so we do try to optimize our signal timing and do provide priority where we can to pedestrians and cyclists. So there are a lot of different things that go into the timing of the signals. So, you know, if there's an intersection that's very close by, sometimes it would be hard to automatically have the pathway signal turn green every time somebody presses a button, because it could cause backups through the intersection, which could cause the close by intersection, that could cause some safety issues and things like that. So we really have to look at it case by case, and where we are able to, we do our best to try and you know, prioritize that.
Yeah. I would say again that the signals team is very responsive. So if you're ever walking somewhere and you get nailed, like, don't hesitate to call our office or to get in touch with 311 to report it, because they'll look at it and they'll adjust it by just a few seconds, and it's computerized. So you don't have to wait for someone to fill out something in triplicate. They can just flick a button. So I found that team to be fantastic. And I always do, I mean, I know that 311 is certainly faster and preferred, but our office also opens 311 tickets when casework comes through, because it just helps us to keep track of what people are talking about. You know what I mean? So we never mind. I don't know if they mind, but we never mind you letting us know what's on your mind so that we can sort of, keep track of it. Okay, and we're going to have someone, last person over here. And then here you are, you've had your hand. Oh, David, you've had your hand up for a long time. Okay, David.
Okay, this is a red light camera issue. I had a brief word with Krista before. If you think about Maitland coming off the Queensway and going up towards, Walmart, etc., Glenmount and Arundel, they come. And it's one of the most awkward intersections in the city. One, Maitland goes this way, and then Arundel goes here, and Glenmount goes here. So that it's really, making a left turn is hard, because the people coming up behind you are always trying to get away from you to make the left turn, and I worry that they're going to get rear-ended. A red light camera is going in at that intersection, because you can see it, it's not functional yet. And I'm worried that it's because of the situation. You're in so many situations where you're trying to make the left turn and they're coming the other way and you simply can't. And can you stand in the middle of can you go into the middle of the intersection to wait for the light to change to get it? Because sometimes that's literally the only way you can get there. Or can there be an advance green on that?
The advanced green would be a challenging situation at a location like that doesn't have a dedicated left turn lane. Usually we would try to accommodate that through a specific lane, but for the red light running enforcement, there really won't be any issues if you advance past the kind of entry into the intersection and wait to make your left turn. Most signalized intersections with permissive left turns operate that way, and we have red light running cameras at many of them already, and the sensors are set up in such a way that those that are waiting to turn left that have entered into the intersection already will not get ticketed. Yeah. It's not just a way to get more revenue. No.
Okay, so I just wanted to say thank you very much. I know we had a lot of questions left over, and that's a good thing. I want you to be continuing the conversation with us. I hope that we can give a big round of applause to our panelists today. It takes a lot of vulnerability to come up here and sort of just show your cards and say, these are my limitations, these are my realities. It can be tough not to be able to deliver on all the things that are really important to people. It can be really tough. And these guys have been doing it for a long time. And the other people that do it are my staff, my team. They work really, really hard. And I don't think I would be half the councillor I am without them. And so I just want to say a big thank you to David and Chelsea and Zoe and Heather for everything that they do. And yeah, that's it. We're getting the boot. We're getting out of the room. I think this was nice enough that we'll do it again next year. I hope you'll agree. They keep coming back. So again, thank you so much for your generosity and good spirit today. Thank you.